I love it, Jake. Thank you for the opportunity to be here. Thank you for the invitation. I just want to first give a shout out to our organizers, Professors Maile, Hoku, Kehao, Angela, for organizing this panel and also the whole symposium. And also I just want to recognize our graduate students too, who are also part of this labor. So thank you all so much. So a little bit about myself. I am 5'7" tall. I'm not going to tell you my weight, but I'm thin enough, I think. I've got black curly hair, brown skin complexion. I'm wearing a teal colored shirt, and my background is actually where I am Skyping in or Zooming in from today, and that's Tongva land of the Gabrielino Tongva peoples in Los Angeles. So I am going to turn over to sharing my PowerPoint slide here, and we'll get going. So can you all see that? All right.
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Okay, so decolonizing specific bodies is our panel, and one of the real exciting things here is I love thinking about Teresia Teaiwa's work here and the play on words, right? So we're not just talking about the specific body as in SPECIFC, but we're talking about specific body, right? SPACIFIC. So hopefully you got that part. So super exciting. And I want to start here with a quote of this word, which I think specific body is something that I'm really excited about, because I talk about disabled bodies, I talk about ableism, and I also talk about cultural understandings of these concepts. And so I want to start here with Teresia's quote, and in her article, Bikinis and Other Specific Notions, she suggests that the name Bikini, spelled B-I-K-I-N-I, evokes memories and visions of a specific historical and contemporary political reality. And specifically here, Teresia's nodding to nuclear testing in the Bikini Atolls as just one, she says, of an albeit of precarious one of the many colonial phenomenon and process that affect the Pacific region. So I'm only going to start off with this quote to kind of kick us off with how we're thinking here about the body, you know, and along this way, and how do we sort of think intersectionally, not just about the specific body, but also other aspects of the social and physical environment. So I'll briefly read here this quote for those who are listening. And Teresia says, "The specific body, which is S-Pacific, PACIFIC body, emerges for me as a site for comprehending specific social and physical environments, and for apprehending generic effects of neocolonialism on all islanders, and are committed to political and cultural cooperation at the regional level," end quote. So I want to start with this quote because I think part of my work in thinking about pedagogies and teaching during COVID is also about the personal and the political. You know, this kind of duality in our teaching in Pacific studies, but also as Pacific people. So this is just my modest contribution here, kind of thinking about teaching, you know, at the duality of these aspects of the professional, but also the personal. So in the same piece, Teresia talks about decolonizing of the specific bodies in intimately woven ways, woven into island women's activism. So this is sort of where my work sort of springboards out of in thinking about women's social movements in the Pacific. And also footnoted in this quote, Teresia talks about you know, earlier island women's work like Laura Souders in Guam, and also Hanani Gay-Tress work in Hawaii as examples, right, of this women's activism here. So now turning to kind of my own work around women's activism or disability activism, I start here with this picture of several women who were the co-founders of two schools in Samoa, one called Ongawhima Malama, and the other one called Lotu Tobafai. And these two schools were created in the mid-1970s and early 1980s. And they were precisely created because disabled students, specifically those with physical and intellectual disabilities, were not admitted into formal schools. So this picture here is of 7 women. They're standing together as a group. Above their head is a sign that reads IHC Ongawhima Western Samoa, and it's a blue sign with white font. So this is also for me kind of an unknown history. My auntie here, who's pictured here on the right side, she's got a black blouse on and a white skirt. My auntie Stella on my father's side was also a co-founder of these schools. So much of my work here thinks about what can disability activism teach us about inclusion, collective care, and self-determination. So I'm really interested in these kind of relationships and how they sort of bring forth change, not only within our own communities, but also in our own cultural practices. So I specifically kind of focus on Tatoo, as Jake read my bio on this book that I'm working on. And this right here is a mural of a very famous Samoan proverb. It's called Oleala Ilipule Ole Tautua, which means that the road to leadership is through service. And just to back up a little bit and describe a little bit of this mural was created by J.P. Pereira. I think some of you may remember that his brother Len was on a panel yesterday. And so this mural is on the side of a gas station in Long Beach, California. And just to describe the photo, it is a young woman sitting cross-legged, and she is wringing out ava, which is a liquid, AVA, and it's into a kava bowl, and that's spelled K-A-V-A, liquid, and she's in a taupo. She would be considered a taupo, T-A-U-P-O-U. And this is usually sort of happens in a formal Samoan ceremony or sort of a closing of a ceremony. And so I don't know if you can see a little bit, but this phrasing or Samoan proverb is also to the right-hand side translated to Spanish. So that was something that was really interesting that JP also added on to this mural. So along these lines, I really want to just think about the question of what does it mean to tautua those not held in high positions or high regard to the community, right? So when we think about disabled people, how do we kind of think about tautua, which means service to your family, to your church, to your village, and what happens when we sort of push those boundaries and extend those boundaries to also tautua those who are not often regarded in those positions. So to turn to the personal end, I just, Teresia's work and personally has also inspired me to kind of learn more about my Ikiribas side, which is on my maternal side. So I grew up in Samoa knowing my grandmother is Ikiribas, but not fully understanding these dynamics. So my generation of cousins, we are kind of actively reconnecting these branches. And so to just talk a little bit about these pictures, this is kind of our homework reveal here. So I'm going to pretend if Teresia was here, she would in the audience physically. This is kind of our homework that I've been doing around sort of recovering and making connections for this side of my family. So this is what we found so far. So yeah, Teresia, yeah. Ono sai mai se fa fola tule le tala matua inga. So let me go through these pictures and who these fabulous people are. So on your left side is my maternal grandmother, and her name is Kaimoa Tibau. And then to the middle, and she is it's a black and white photo, but she is a woman sitting down with about shoulder length hair. She is looking straight into the camera, and she's got a dress on. And then in the middle here is another picture of 3 women and a little girl. So the woman in this pastel dress, sorry, that's my timer. So the woman here on, sorry about that. The woman here, I'm timing myself out here. The woman here in the middle is my cousin Julie, and then my auntie Ruth. And then this is my cousin Aina. So this is my maternal grandmother, and this is my mother. And then this is the latest that we connection that we had in 2019. And this is George, who is my nephew, who connected with our family there in Ikiribas in 2019. And so coincidentally, George is also one of Terry's former students at Vic. So yeah, so this is sort of looping back, I think, to the question of pedagogies and teaching Pacific studies at the moment. I also just want to throw in here that, Yuki Kihara's work, also sort of talks about this, that the Pacific has always been diasporic, right? So meaning that our connections to each other, which, something that the last panelist talked about, are not new. And so all these connections with the ocean, the waka, and whatnot are all sort of starting points where we can think about themes of, queering, but also, in disability studies, we say cripping, these aspects of our identity, of our practice, and our knowledge production. So I think finally I'm going to wrap it up here at the structural level. What I really want to highlight here is that the environmental pollution, militarism, and colonialism equally creates disability, mental illness, and chronic conditions and diseases, which very much affects our communities. And I think we have to destigmatize the shame attached to them and to tell our stories. So here I'm hoping that we embrace kind of our stories, our own histories, arts, culture, and music here in ways to teach us about the past and the future. So on that note, I'm gonna stop there. Faafetai lava.